Well, hello everyone. We're boiling maple syrup this afternoon. Um, the last video I had just fired up this boiler for the first time, actually boiling maple syrup, and I wanted to give you an update on kind of how this waste oil burner is working. So we had a little bit of problem getting the entire pan to boil. And if you watched the other videos, I had showed you two burners here in the front, and now I've added the third burner, and I've also added a steam hood. We did put a preheat lines through the steam hood, but we're having trouble getting enough sap to keep our float going. We're not sure. We added that small clear line, trying to bleed off any air. Doesn't seem to help anything. Where it goes out through the wall, we do have a power fan on the outside, but apparently it's not quite large enough to actually draw all the steam out, but it's doing a really good job. We are drawing off sap or syrup at the moment. We're just a tick over 7. I would rather have it there than not quite done enough. I'll add a little bit of hot sap later to when I run it through my hydrometer if it needs any. So I just leave it trickle like you can see there. It does not run constant, but it runs most of the time at a stream like that. So back to the burners. As you can see, there's a propane tank underneath there. I'll go around to the other side and show you in more detail. Well, while we're walking by, there's my float. You can see the rate we're boiling by the amount of sap that's running in. That pretty much maintains that flow there. Had to tip that float pan sideways to get my level, to fine tune my level in the pan. I figured out that works pretty good. So over here on that burner, you can see there's my valve that leaves the oil in, and there's a pipe that goes into the air pipe. It's just a 4-inch air pipe welded into the side of that old propane tank. The ductwork, I just pull it off to light it. I usually dump a little diesel in there in an old rag, and then actually take my acetylene torch and turn the oil on and and the oil will run right through the flame on my torch, and that gets it hot enough to continue the burn. That burner works really well. There's very little maintenance to it. It just kind of takes care of itself. And then you can see those are my other inlets for my other two burners. Those burners need cleaned every time I fire it up. Just gotta go in there with a pry bar, break all the crusty chunks up, and then shop vac them out. We have a bit of a oily mess in the floor, being soaked up with sawdust. Those front burners are quite a challenge not to flood them. And as soon as we flood it, we get oil leaking out of any cracks or any spot where our weld didn't seal perfectly. So that's been the biggest challenge, is the mess on the floor. So we'll give you a shot here. You can see the stream of oil. That's usually where that back burner runs. If it's too much oil, the chimney will start to get glowing red, That's when I know I need to back it down. And then this in here smokes, but in between the puffs of smoke you can see the oil. And that one there, the oil likes to run off to the side, but you can see there again. And then we mounted a squirrel cage fan on the door before we added the third burner, trying to blow that heat back through the arch. It didn't seem to make much difference, but since the fan is there in the door, we run it all the time. Let's check that temperature again. If we shut the fan off, it wants to smoke out through the fan, and that's not what we want. There is no smoke on the chimney. We'll just give you a quick shot of outside. There's my oil toting pump that I pump it into a tank in my loft that gravity feeds down. The oil and the sap do. There's my chimney, and as you can see, there's absolutely no smoke coming out of it. The fan you can see there in the wall is blowing out that steam from the hood. Like I said, I'm gonna have to maybe increase the size of my fan, but it removes enough steam to keep it from condensating on the roof or the ceiling and raining on our heads. So I also have an RO, just a small one I built up in the loft. I'll show you that in a minute. I also said something about in my last video of a vacuum filter. That's it right there, and you can see some of the syrup. The one to the left, I used some dimetric earth in with the syrup, and it seems to be cloudy. I don't know the reason. The other two, I didn't use any. I just used a pre-filter and a Orlon filter, and it seems like it came out much better than the one with the dimetric earth. I guess if anybody has any explanation on that, you can leave it in the comments. I'll show you my filter setup a little closer here. Ended up just getting a steel ring cut. It is like a donut, so I can set it on a burner and heat up if my syrup cools down too much for bottling. This white valve is where I hook my shop vac up to. And then this little valve here is where I pull off and fill my jars with a thermometer to show my temperature. I keep it above 185 when I'm canning it. And that's what I said about the donut. If it falls beneath that, I will set it back on the stove or my turkey fryer burner here that you see in the background and warm it back up. So yeah, it's just a kettle with the bottom cut out, and I just wedge those two filters in between. My chains, they stretched a bit, and so that's why these bottle caps are wedged in between to take up the extra tension. Those chains have to be relatively snug so it doesn't pull that filter down into the syrup when you turn the vacuum on. Alright, I will take a quick peek at this reverse osmosis system. Alright, here we're up in the loft. Here's the big tote is the sap that I'm just pumping out of that tote and returning my concentrate back into it. And then the 55-gallon drum is where my permeate water is going into. It's just a simple 4-filter RO that I set up. Bought everything off of Amazon. We're running about 90 psi. I didn't have enough teas, and so I ended up with 4 lines going back in, but that's my permeate water. And if you can see, right there is my concentrated sap. It's not nearly large enough to even come close to keeping up with my boiler, but I figured any little amount helps, saving fuel and time. I bought another 4 filters. They're not here yet. I'm gonna add another 4 filters to it and see if I can double my output. It may not, but I figured I'll give it a try. See if I could double the capacity would certainly help us out. So yeah, when I'll run, I mean, it depends, but maybe 10-15 gallons of permeate water, and then I'll run that permeate water back through. You just open up the needle valve and let it, let the gauge drop to 0. Yeah, we're running them, I guess what they would call in parallel, just letting it recirculate in my sap, because it will never keep up